Welcome, and thank you guys so much for joining us today for Great Management is Great Mentoring, Mentoring Youth in the Workplace. Today's session is brought to you by Mentor, the National Mentoring Partnership, in partnership with Bank of America. My name is Dan Horgan. I am one of the panelists and presenters today. I'm a corporate partnerships consultant with Mentor. And joining me, we have Abby Hollinsworth, the Senior Vice President and Program Manager at the Bank of America Charitable Foundation, as well as Carrie Sullivan, the President of the Bank of America Charitable Foundation. Before we jump in, I'd like to just take a minute to give you everybody a quick overview of the operations around our system. First and foremost, everyone is muted who's joining us for today's webinar, just to make sure that we maintain the best sound quality throughout the course of the session. If you have any questions at all, and we hope that you will, or any comments that you'd like to share with us, please use the chat box on the right side of the screen, and we'll be monitoring that throughout the course of the session and leave some time at the end for questions. If we run out of time at the end for questions, we'll be sure to answer as many of them as possible in a post-webinar communications out to all registered participants. I also want to make sure everyone knows that after today's session, you'll be invited to participate in a very brief session survey. We'd love to get your feedback around the content provided today, as well as any additional resources or support that would be supportive for the work moving forward. And then lastly, we are recording today's webinar, and we will make that recording available to you to be able to play back and dive deeper into the content. We also recognize that as we dive in, there's going to be a lot of content shared on the slides. So we also are going to make a PDF file available for everyone who's registered for today's session to make sure that you have an opportunity to go back and leverage today's content as well. And without further ado, I would love to turn it over to Carrie Sullivan, again, the President of the Bank of America Charitable Foundation. Carrie?
Good afternoon, and thanks, Dan, for that great introduction. I know Abby and I were looking forward to this session, and I have to say, Mentor, the National Mentoring Partnership, has been a long-standing partner with Bank of America, and I know we are working with many of the affiliates across the country as well, as we see mentoring as an important component of much of our work. So just to set some context for today's discussion, at the Bank of America Foundation, we're very focused on the issues surrounding economic mobility. And we're looking to help populations that have barriers to employment, or obstacles, if you will, on getting on track for that job that will lead to economic success. We've done quite a bit of work with youth employment, particularly in summer internships and summer work opportunities, and realized that this is a huge opportunity for us to make an extraordinary difference by not only providing the job, but more importantly, providing the mentoring and managing that young people need to sort of do well and find a place for themselves in the workplace. So we look at youth employment as really a key driver of economic mobility. There are so many young people across the country who are unemployed right now, and this is a real issue, I think, if you think about what their future is like, what our future workforce is like, and the future of our country if we don't actively engage young people in meaningful employment. And there's a whole lot of research that really backs that up. Young people who have employment at a young age have a better trajectory in life in terms of longer-term earnings. So there's a lot at stake here in terms of providing young people the opportunity to see themselves in the workplace. But what really makes the difference is a good mentor. And many young people come into a summer job, and this is, just about the time when we'll be placing our young people in opportunities. But this may be their first job. They may not understand corporate culture or what's expected of them in the workplace. So we know that managers who are well prepared to be that mentor, be that champion for that young person, can make all the difference to their success. So we're very pleased today to be partnering with Mentor to develop a career mentoring toolkit for volunteers and their managers who are going to be working with them over the summer months. And we refer to this at Bank of America as mentoring with a purpose, really career-focused mentoring that helps individuals navigate a new environment and really look for the ways to enhance their skills, ask questions, be part of the team. Managers really have such an impact, and I know many of you remember your first job, and if you had a great manager, that probably has made all the difference. So this summer, we're really hoping that the work that we do largely around our commitment to youth, and last year, just to give you an example, we committed $40 million to support youth success which included 100,000 work opportunities for young people, not only summer jobs, but also young adults in the workplace. But this is something we think is critically important to the success of our country, the success of our communities, in terms of making sure we are building an inclusive society where everyone has a chance. And as you know, many of the young people we bring into summer job opportunities are young people that didn't perhaps have access to these opportunities. So, and if we think about the importance of mentoring, this is a critical time to really work with that young person and make an extraordinary difference in their lives. I know that if young people coming into the workplace have a good manager, have a mentor, can see the purpose of their work, they're going to do well. And internships that turn into full-time employment is really one of our goals. So over the next few months, many of you will be working with youth, and maybe for a short period of time, but you can have an absolutely huge impact on their success. So this toolkit is really designed to sort of help you with this and be a guide. So with that, I will turn it over to Dan, who worked closely with Abby on putting this toolkit together, and look forward to hearing more from them. So thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Carrie, definitely. And thank you so much. I mean, the commitment that Bank of America has to a wide variety of charitable causes is impressive. And then the commitment you have to not only engaging youth in the workplace, but ensuring that their managers have the right level of support as well to best mentor them is fantastic. So we thank you definitely for your leadership as well. So with that, I'd love to just take a minute or two to share with you a quick overview. If you're new to Mentor, the National Mentoring Partnership, I also want to say a huge thank you to Carrie, not only for her support from Bank of America, but also her leadership on the Mentor, the National Mentoring Partnership Board of Directors as well. So if you are new to the organization, we have been around for 25 years, mainly focused on increasing the quantity and quality of youth mentoring across the United States. And really that's broken down into 4 buckets of work. One is in driving awareness around the need for mentors. 2 is around the research around what it is to advance a quality mentoring relationship. 3 is the technical assistance necessary to take those effective practices, to take what we learn in our research and put it into practice with organizations across the country. And then 4th is to really recognize that in order for any of this work to happen, it really requires incredible partnerships across multiple sectors. So Mentor works with a wide variety of national organizations as well as local organizations, some of which are seen on the screen right now. Many, many, many others are not, but this just gives you a sense of the diversity of the types of organizations that Mentor has partnered with on a national level, as well as at the local market level too. We also have an affiliate network across the country. In 26 locations, you'll find that we either at the state or regional level have affiliates that are doing exactly what I just talked about on a national level. They're doing it at a regional or a state level. So they're raising awareness around the local need for mentors. They're getting out there and researching effective practices in play. They're putting forward technical assistance and helping to build the capacity of mentoring programs. And they're really facilitating and convening the partnerships that drive this mentoring work forward. In addition to those affiliates, we also have a number of public and private partnerships as well. In addition to Bank of America, you'll see a number of our other additional corporate partners on the screen, all of which we work with in some capacity to either develop a mentoring program that their employees are engaged in, or leveraging their support to really help scale mentoring efforts in the markets and communities in which they're operating. Many of us, just in terms of starting today's conversation with what is the real need for mentoring, when we think about the context of the work that Mentor does, it's important to be reminded that 1 in 3 young people are growing up in America today without a mentor. So 9 million young people that have a wide variety of challenges surrounding them are in need of a support system, a web of support to really help them work through those challenges and be on a path to success for both college and career and beyond. And so not only is the need great, but we also wanted to, based on the research, we also wanted to understand the impact on the mentee, on the young person themselves. And so about a year ago, Mentor implemented a research project called the Mentoring Effect, which was published and is available on mentoring.org's website. And what we found in that research, which went directly to the source, went and asked young people themselves who were in mentoring relationships, what impact that was having on them. And what you'll see on the screen is just a few of the results. 65% more likely to enroll in college, 78% more likely to volunteer in their communities, and my favorite statistic is that 90% of respondents who had a mentor said they are interested in becoming mentors themselves. The rippling effect of what great managers who serve as great mentors for young people in the workplace can have is impressive when you think about those individuals going and then mentoring additional other young people within your community. And so it's a pretty profound impact that the managers or you particularly are able to have in really changing the trajectory of the lives of not only these young people, but all the young people that those youth interns then impact through their own community engagement. I also want to, before we jump into the content and sort of lay out the guide for you, I would love to turn it over to Abby to dive a little bit deeper into Bank of America's commitment to mentoring with a purpose.
Thank you so much, Dan. And our hope is that we can provide, as Dan goes through the content today, we can provide some examples from our own experience at Bank of America that may be useful to you and your organizations as you manage and mentor your youth and employees this summer. As Carrie mentioned, we talk about career-focused mentoring as mentoring with a purpose because it is really that laser focus to help individuals develop the skills, expertise, business acumen that they need to be successful. I'm sure that you know, if you think about your own job, some of the most difficult parts of your job are sometimes navigating an organization, figuring out the relationships and the environment and the culture of an organization and how to navigate that is some of the most ambiguous and difficult parts of starting a new job. And that's really where mentors can be really helpful. In addition to kind of that tactical skills development, they can be really helpful in navigating those relationships and figuring out how to help a young person advance in their own career. Additionally, especially when you're working with low-income youth or low-income individuals, these individuals do not already have a large professional network established. They may not know anyone who's gone to college. They may not know anyone who works in a professional setting. So they don't have those role models to model appropriate behavior or to navigate a pathway to a professional career because they may not have someone who's blazed the trail ahead of them. So their managers in a first-time internship or work experience can be really key in showing them how that's done. The other thing I did want to mention is we always talk about making this a great experience for the intern, which is certainly the goal and what we want to do, but this is also really beneficial for the business. There is or your organization. There's investing in your employees is incredibly important because they can be more productive. They can contribute to your mission or to your bottom line. If you invest the time in them, they feel more engaged, they'll have higher morale, and can be more productive to help you with your organization. Additionally, we know that with our employees that have mentors or are mentoring, they're more likely to stay with the company longer because they see opportunities for growth, they feel supported, and they really thrive in their position. So not only is it investing in the next generation of workers and enhancing their leadership skills, but it's also increasing productivity, increasing morale, and really increasing engagement of your workforce. So there's a real business benefit to doing this type of mentoring and getting your managers engaged. If you can go to the next slide, please, Dan. So I want to talk a little bit tactically to provide some examples about what we're doing at Bank of America. At the bank, really volunteering is part of our culture. Last year in 2016, our employees volunteered over 2 million hours of volunteer time in the community, and 80,000 of those hours were spent mentoring. And so that's all types of mentoring, working with youth, working with adults. And so we're really proud of that and really proud that mentoring is a big part of our culture, both internally and out in the community. And as Carrie mentioned, youth employment is a big priority for us. So whenever we have a philanthropic relationship with an organization, we don't look to just make a grant and then run away. We really want to work with the organization to bring all of our assets to bear to help this youth employment issue. So we'll make a grant, and then we use our employees to mentor the young people, mentor the people that are going through workforce development training programs, and then also provide better money habits and financial lessons to these people, because we know that with a first-time job or with a job comes a paycheck, and managing that check responsibly is really key to helping them on their path to financial wellness. So we try to layer on the mentoring and financial education components to help those people with those programs. Additionally, so that's our work in the community. As I mentioned, and what we'll focus on today, in our company, we not only provide philanthropic grants to nonprofits to support workforce development programs, but we also work with nonprofits to hire people into our lines of business. We work with organizations like Year Up and NPower, and then over the summer we work with many Mayor's Summer Youth Employment programs across the country to hire summer interns from low-income areas in our financial centers. We're really proud of this program, and we're really thrilled to support these young people and give them a first-time work opportunity. But we know how critical mentoring is for these young people, being their first-time job, especially in a professional setting. So we work very closely with our managers to make sure they're prepared to not only manage their interns, but also support them and mentor them to ensure a great experience for everyone. You can go to the next slide, please. So thinking about how does a manager be a good mentor, I'd like to have everyone on the phone today think about the best manager you've ever had. How did they support you? What made them great? Why were they your favorite manager? And the chances are they really invested in you. They really wanted to partner with you. They gave you a lot of respect regardless for your age. They thought about where you were in your lifespan and were flexible as far as giving you assignments, and really worked with you to support you through your work experience. And that's what we ask our managers to do as they're mentoring young people. If you think about a young person in their first-time job, if you remember how intimidating that was in your first job to have a manager that you had to report to, not understanding the organization, not really knowing what you had to do, we think about how intimidating it is for them, and how as a manager you can support them and make sure they feel comfortable, included, and a part of the team so they can be successful for the summer. Oftentimes young people are dismissed because of their age, so giving them that respect, that empathetic listening ear, and making them feel part of the team is really critical to mentoring them and managing them. Get to the next slide, please. So this is kind of the framework that we're going to be working with today, thinking about actively mentoring youth as you manage them. The key phases to ensuring a great experience are onboarding youth, so developing those relationships, making sure they understand their roles and responsibilities, and really investing upfront at the beginning of the relationship is key. Continual support, so that career mentoring throughout the relationship. And then at the end of the internship or end of the summer, how do you close out that experience, but put them on the next step, put them on the next pathway for career success? So that's the framework we're going to be working with today, and I will turn it back over to Dan to kind of take us through some of the content. Dan?
Excellent. Thanks, Abby. So I just want to give everybody a heads up. As I shared in the very beginning, we have worked on developing this webinar and all of the advice that is packed into today's session in a way that really equips you with not only just advice, but really tangible tools. One of the things that we saw in lots of the responses from the registered participants was around making sure that this is something that's very tactical, that you can pick up and you can apply either directly as a manager or in terms of passing along to managers that might be in your program that are hosting youth interns. So as Abby mentioned, we're going to take each of these three phases and we're going to really deep dive into each one of them and share with you a lot of content. Again, these slides will be available after today's session, so you'll be able to print them off and be able to refer to them even further. So with that, I'm going to deep dive into the first part of onboarding, is really in terms of building relationships, first focusing on oneself. So as a manager, really getting clear about, in order for us to establish a healthy relationship with a youth intern in the workplace, we really have to understand our own style, our own preferences when it comes to communications, when it comes to our leadership tendencies. And so there's great tools out there like the Personality Compass, like Myers-Briggs, and lots of other leadership or personality assessments that I'm sure many of you have maybe leveraged or experienced through your own professional development. But really getting clear about, as a manager, what those are for you will help set you up for success with a youth intern, because it enables you to clearly articulate to that youth intern what your tendencies are. It also creates a space for you to ask them in terms of their own self-awareness. What are some of their strengths? What are some of their life experiences that have impacted the way they interact today? Have they ever had the opportunity to work within a corporate setting or a nonprofit organization? And then also looking at who are the people in their lives. So this type of self-awareness opens up the conversation to understand how others have been influential in their lives, helping them to either accelerate themselves forward in terms of success, but also to Abby's question about not only what makes great managers, but also what has been some of those experiences that haven't been that great with managers, that if we put on the table right up front in our relationship building process, we can really work to ensure that those bad characteristics don't pop up in our interaction, in our work with young people in the workplace. The second part of building a relationship is really understanding the sense of trust, the trust that's going to happen between the manager and the youth intern, and the trust that really is encouraged of the young person in thinking about how they follow through on their commitments, how they're honest with others in terms of giving feedback or sharing their point of view, and making sure that they're showing a genuine concern for others that are a part of a project team or a part of a department, and showing up authentically each and every day. So creating that trusting space, not only in the manager to youth relationship, but creating that trusting environment for that young person to thrive in the workplace is going to be really important. The next part about building relationships is to understand what the research tells us about adding value to others. Adam Grant, one of the youngest tenured professors at the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School, wrote a great book called Give or Take, and in it, Adam shares this quote: "If we create networks with the sole intention of getting something, we won't succeed. We can't pursue the benefits of networks. The benefits ensue from investments in meaningful activities and relationships." In other words, if we can encourage young people in the workplace as well as their managers to constantly look at their relationships from a lens of how can I add value to this particular situation, to this particular project, or to this particular team. If you're always looking for opportunities to add value, you're always looking for opportunities to advance both yourself professionally and personally, as well as the team, the overall organization and department. And that ties right in with career advancement. So thinking about in that relationship building phase with a youth intern in the workplace, how can you identify upfront what some of the career aspirations or career interests of the youth intern may be? You know, sometimes young people are going to enter a summer youth employment opportunity or an internship experience not exactly with a lot of clarity about where they want to go or what they want to do. And to be able to transparently communicate that up front is really important for the experience to be shaped in a way that gives that young person experiences to explore different points of view, different pathways for their future career path. And so again, understanding and opening up what those career advancement or career planning discussions are in the relationship building process is helpful, in addition to the manager sharing his or her own path that they've taken and some of the nuances or lessons learned that they've gathered along the way. Again, one of the requests in the registration process was that we provide some really tangible tools, some things that you can take and give to your managers or use if you're the manager yourself. So there's a couple that we're going to highlight here. The first in the relationship building space is called the life map. This is super simple to facilitate. You just grab a sheet of paper and a pen, and you ask them to map out basically some of the key milestones throughout the course of their life. So think about it in the context of what are some defining moments that you have experienced that have shaped who you are today, the decisions, the thoughts, the actions that you take. As you jot down those life map moments, then you essentially, with your manager, take some time to share those life journeys with each other. It opens the door for conversation and for context setting around where both of you are coming into the relationship. So understanding each other's on-ramps and how each other's past stories have really shaped who you are today. And so being mindful of that life map exercise is also connecting back to one of our previous tips, which is defining what those moments are in each of our lives, both the mentor/manager and the young person. The second is we recognize that for many managers and mentors who are working with young people between the ages of 16 and 24 in the workplace, that it can sometimes be awkward to initiate some conversation beyond the tactical work that needs to get done. And so we recommend these conversation cards from the Search Institute, which developed the 40 developmental assets. It's called Propellers, quick questions to launch good conversations. We've used these in lots of mentoring experiences where people can essentially just grab one of the cards and ask each other the questions. It sort of breaks the ice and takes away some of the awkwardness around the relationship building at first. And it also helps, again, to gain insight around people's past experiences. The next exercise is called 3 Wishes. 3 Wishes is an opportunity for us to think about in the context of goal setting, where we are today versus where we want to get to, say 6 months or 12 months, or even at the end of the summer internship experience. And so the 3 wishes, both the mentor and the young person identify what their wishes are, and then they share those wishes with each other. And to some extent, they could take that to the next level in thinking about what are some of the activities that they need to stop, start, and continue in order to move from where they are today to where they might want to be in terms of their wishes happening, their goals coming true. The last exercise, which we really encourage from a standpoint of if you haven't interacted as a manager with 16 to 24-year-olds more recently, this is a great exercise to implement as a part of an onboarding process. It's called Back to the Future. It's where a mentor or a manager writes a letter to their 16-year-old self, explaining what they wish they had learned sooner in life. The opposite happens with the young person. They write a letter to their 40-year-old self, explaining what they want to be reminded of when they're 40. And so again, from this idea of building an authentic youth-adult partnership in the workplace between a manager and a youth intern, these activities are all sort of starting points, things that you can integrate into an onboarding process or integrate into your first couple of sessions with the youth intern as they're getting acclimated to your place of employment. That moves us in the onboarding conversation to the next tip, which is around not just building relationships, but ensuring that we're providing enough context. And context really in terms of 2 different elements, company context and project context. And what this really requires is both the young person and the manager to zoom out and in at times throughout the course of their work together. Zooming out in terms of stepping outside of the tactical to-do list and reminding ourselves how that to-do list connects back to a team's set of goals or a department's objectives or even the company's overall set of priorities. Zooming in to then understand what specifically needs to happen. So in the context of a project, making sure that we're coaching youth interns to always clarify things like what are the specific goals that we're trying to achieve with this project, what's the timeline for which the project is needing to be accomplished, and who's accountable, not only for the completion of the tactics, but who else is involved in some regards to this project, whether it's as a decision maker or as a participant. So you understand and know who all the players are. Having that project context in line with the company context helps a young person who's working for maybe their first experience as an employee really understand where they fit within the bigger picture. Abby, I know you have some great tips that you want to share from your experience at Bank of America.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. A great example of this is we have our interns from our summer youth employment programs working in our financial centers, and their role is to work with customers that are waiting in line for the teller to teach customers about how to do banking on our mobile app, how to use the ATM, or how they can use online banking. But rather than just telling our interns, hey, your job is to teach people how to download the mobile app and how to use it, we talk to them about the bigger context, that zooming out. We know that more and more people are using their phones to do banking. People want to be able to take care of their banking wherever they are. They don't want to necessarily have to come into a center. So we want to, as a company, make banking convenient for our customers. We want them to know that they can deposit a check when they're at home by taking a picture of it on their phone. They don't have to come to a banking center to do that. And so giving students that big context of this is the way we're moving, more people are doing things online, and we want to be a part of that by teaching them how they can do business with us in a number of different ways, put their role in context of a bigger picture versus just telling them, we want you to educate our customers on this. So giving the big picture is really helpful for them to feel like they're part of something larger and part of kind of our company mission.
Thanks, Abby. So I want to, as we transition from building relationships to making sure we're providing context on the company, big picture, as well as the project, smaller picture, the next tip is around making sure that we're clarifying goals. And so this image really highlights some core ingredients to success. So managers really clearly articulating what their goals are for youth interns and the internship experience, as well as what their expectations are. So it's not just the what we're going to get accomplished, but it's the how we're going to go about accomplishing it in terms of clarifying those expectations up front. And having a conversation with the youth intern about that, exploring again if they've been in situations where those expectations have been present, and if not, how do we set them up for success from the very beginning by checking in more frequently around how those expectations are being met, and if there's gaps, how we can fill in the gap. An important part of success is not just clarifying what the manager is trying to achieve in expectations, but for the young person who's in the workplace as well to understand what his or her goals are and his or her expectations of management, of team members. So this is, again, an example where a young person could say, you know, one of my expectations is that you'll not only delegate tasks to me, but in the delegation of those tasks, that you'll always provide the necessary context so I understand how this particular assignment fits in within the broader work of the department or the broader work of our team. That's an example of what we can coach our youth interns to ask for or be curious about in the course of their working arrangement. The third is short and long-term career goals. Again, this goes to the building relationship piece. The context is really helpful for managers to ask the question of our youth interns and saying, okay, so what is it that you're aspiring to do in your career? What are some of the career interests that you have? And then debriefing that by saying, okay, so if those are your different career path options, what are some of the skills that you think that you would need to be successful in that career journey? Then looking at one layer deeper, which is, okay, so which of those skills do you feel like you're confident in or you've had experience in, and which skills are areas that you'd like more experience or more exposure to, or would like to have additional support around developing. That way it creates a very clear plan of action for that manager to think about how they're going to integrate that youth intern into not only their day-to-day work, but maybe special assignments or special opportunities that get them greater skill building opportunities or greater access to networks which further help them decide what their career path is going to look like. And that goes to the fourth piece, which is about skill building. So coming into a youth internship experience, having a conversation between manager and mentor as well as the youth intern about where their skills are today and where they hope their skills grow to over the course of the work experience so that you can consistently sort of check in and see how those particular prioritized skills are evolving over the course of the work-based experience. So transitioning to the fact that in addition to onboarding and working through relationship building and context and goal setting, there's a variety of barriers that are bound to come up, right? We all have experienced these barriers in some capacity, or we have seen these play out in the workplace. And so we're not going to go through all these tips, but a couple that I would just highlight for you when thinking about the role of a manager, also being a great mentor. The first one is the most important, and that is to set a tone for open communications. So it aligns really well with the sense of building trust with the youth intern. This idea of consistently having an open door policy where that young person is invited and it's stated multiple times to them. Anytime you have a question, absolutely feel free to ask those questions. No question is a bad question, right? You're here to learn as much as you can, soak in as much as you can over the course of the experience. And so maintaining that open communications is going to be really important. The other is to make sure that feedback is given in a way that is timely, specific, and action-oriented. So timely, specific, and action-oriented. What that means is that feedback for young people in the workplace, if they are working on a project, they're 2 or 3 weeks into it, you see them going off course, it's not waiting to a midpoint to have a conversation about where they are so far. It's about jumping in that moment, being timely, being very specific about what you're observing, and making sure that you're action-oriented in setting forward a newer set of tasks. So how are we going to course correct, or how are we going to get back on track with where we need to be? That plays into this idea of strengthening the young person's resiliency. So for many young people, if they get constructive feedback for the first time, they might go on the defense, right? And so helping them to understand the value of resiliency and how they can build that resiliency muscle is really important. And one way of doing that is to have a conversation with the youth interns about past challenges that they have successfully navigated. So asking them, what's the last time where you had a problem and you successfully worked through it? What were some of the tactics that you used to navigate and get to that point of success? Are any of those tactics that you deployed in the past relevant to how you can work through maybe a challenge or a barrier that you're facing today? So it's reminding young people that they have successfully navigated challenges or conflict in the past, and there's clear opportunities for them to leverage those experiences in overcoming whatever challenges or barriers surface today. The next point is really around focusing on a young person's strengths versus their deficits. Again, as a manager/mentor, it's really important that we spend our time focusing in on the assets, the strengths that a young person brings to our organization, as opposed to all the things they're doing wrong, right? And so as we're building relationships and we're seeing performance, we can get frustrated with things that maybe aren't the way that we would want it done. But being reminded and having an opportunity to intentionally identify opportunities to play to that young person's strengths, while also challenging them to build and develop new skills, is going to be really important. But those things need to happen in balance in order for both the manager as well as the youth intern to feel successful in the place. The one I'll also mention is teaching problem solving versus providing solutions to young people. This is one that a great mentor of mine early on in my life always would challenge me whenever I would bring a problem and I would ask for a solution. The famous question that I would get asked would be, well, I don't know, what would you do? And so really as managers and mentors, it's recognizing that our role is not always to provide the specific solution or the specific answer or next step, but it's being mindful of the fact that our role is sometimes to push back and develop that muscle around critical thinking and problem solving and creativity, really challenging young people to think beyond their familiar and make connections between things that may seem unlikely. That's the idea of how we move from a point of a challenge or barrier to a point of a solution. The last one I would just emphasize would be around social capital. And this is, again, reminding managers/mentors that it's really important for young people in the workplace to have multiple people that they can turn to have multiple champions that they can go to for different pieces of advice, to learn from them in terms of their career pathways, and just be exposed to a variety of different experiences, career pathways, points of view. It helps to not only strengthen the social networks of that youth intern, but it also helps to broaden their understanding of how other people operate in the workplace, which helps them, again, further develop their workplace etiquette and work through some of those challenges with the more champions that they are able to establish. Abby, I know you got some great tips for this one too.
Yeah, I would also mention that when you're thinking about the structure of your program, to think about barriers that youth may face with the way the program is structured. So for example, we know that we're working with a low-income population that may or may not have access to transportation. So transportation, in addition to kind of problem solving, these kind of things, transportation is a structural barrier that our young people face. So we look to select financial center locations that are along a public transit route or accessible to public transit, so our young people can get to work without issues. And another idea that come through one of our managers that we've implemented over the last couple of years, and this is a great way to get on-the-ground feedback, as if you have your managers really mentoring their students or their interns, is that some of our students may or may not have access to professional clothing and attire. So in our program, we provide all of our students with a Bank of America polo shirt that they can wear to work. We actually give them a couple of them so they can wear it to work, so they're dressed appropriately. One more thing that they don't have to worry about. And then lastly, we provide training to our managers around kind of working with a population that's coming from a low-income community, population that may not have professional work experience, knowing that these interns differ from some of our other internship programs, to make sure our managers are ready to support these young people, teach those problem-solving skills, and help the youth overcome any barriers that they have. So thanks, Dan.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we wind out the first section around onboarding, I know there was a couple of questions that came in specifically around smaller organizations that maybe have limited staff. capacity, how do they most effectively, or how do they work through with a variety of projects, the onboarding of a new intern? And I would just say a couple key tips to keep in mind. One is, even when small organizations with a limited number of staff, it's really, really important that one person is designated as the manager of that intern. Now, that doesn't mean that that is the only person that that youth intern is going to be working with on various projects. They might have 3 or 4 different projects working with multiple people in an organization. But that one person who's their designated manager is the one that they're going to build a relationship with as a mentor. They're going to be the one that helps guide them in the planning of what they're going to accomplish throughout the youth internship experience. They're also going to be the one that that checks in with the youth intern throughout the course of the experience, asking and reflecting on what's working, what's not working, what are you learning, and how are you applying those lessons learned to your work moving forward. So having that designated person in a smaller organization is really helpful. And then in terms of the onboarding process, it doesn't mean that that one person who's their designated manager has to be the only one in the onboarding. You can divide the onboarding responsibilities up across the leads on the projects that that youth intern is going to be working on. So again, they get that context. You're filling in the gaps so that they understand the full picture. It's kind of like when a young person comes into a workplace for the first time, it's like you're handing them a puzzle board, right? And what they have to do is figure out how to collect the right puzzle pieces to paint the picture and have a clarity around where it is that they're going and what resources, what supports, what direction they need to be able to complete that equation. So hopefully that helps with some of those questions coming in. I'm going to transition us now out of onboarding into our second phase, which is all around career mentoring. And so the very first part of career mentoring is really seeking first to understand through active listening. And this is really, as managers and mentors, where we have to practice a great deal of empathy. Empathy being defined as not having to have experienced the experiences that a young person in a workplace has gone through in their lives, but being able to put ourselves in the shoes of the feelings that they've had in those experiences. So again, if you can imagine, based on what Abby just shared, a young person from a low-income community who has had no work experience, maybe coming from a family where no one in that family, that immediate family, has worked in a corporate setting, and now the young person is walking into a corporate environment for the very first time. It's really important to think about how that young person would be feeling the moment they walk through those doors. They check in at security, they get their badge, and they go up to a very professionally laid out floor, right? And they meet their manager for the first time, and they go into the boardroom. Just imagining the feelings, the emotions that are going through the mind of that young person. As a manager / mentor, it's really important for us to tune into those emotions and to think about, again, not all the time what people are saying to us, but not just how a young person is responding to the questions that we're asking, but a really effective manager and a mentor, even if we think about our own effective experiences with managers, are ones that are listening or observing what we're not saying, right? They can sort of read our emotions through our body language. When we are asked, are you feeling good about the content we've covered? And the answer is yes, but you can sort of tell there's a shyness, or there's some reserved, there's a reserved sense around asking effective questions. It's sort of taking down those barriers, removing those obstacles, and creating a space of trust where you can say, I totally get where you may be feeling overwhelmed by just the environment alone, let alone the work that we're going to be doing together. I just want you to know that each day it'll get better. You'll get more and more familiar with just the space, which will help you get more familiar with the context of what we're going to be working on, right? So again, seeking first to understand by actively listening to what they're saying and what they're not saying, really being reminded that as mentors and managers, we have to signal encouragement to a young person and constantly be their champion, prop them up, and highlight the things that they're doing really well. Those are the things that build their confidence and enable them to overcome the things that maybe aren't quite yet meeting our expectations. The other thing I would just encourage is to always use open questions and always be mindful of what you see happening, not just in your one-on-one relationship, but in terms of the team dynamic with the larger group of people that youth intern might be working with. Terry Barber wrote this great book called The Inspiration Factor, and in it, I love what she outlined, which was you have to notice, name, and nurture individuals in the workplace in order to sort of unlock their full potential. And with that simple phrase, you have to notice the great behavior. You have to name it out loud, pulling them aside after a meeting and saying, you were so present. I saw you taking notes. I heard you asking great questions. I observed you in just the social side of the meeting before we officially got started. I just want to nurture and encourage you to continue doing that because that's really going to set you up for success within our department. Again, noticing, naming, and nurturing builds that sense of confidence, that sense of understanding that somebody's in your corner. Somebody's there to help champion you and looking out for your best interest. That's what it really means when we talk about being able to practice effective empathy. The next area that we're going to go to in career mentoring is around strengthening cultural competence. I think it's really important as we think about cultural competence that it's both an understanding as managers that we need an awareness of our own cultural identity and view about differences, as well as the ability, the willingness, the eagerness to learn and build on the cultures and community norms of others. So it really is a two-way street. And by taking that theory to practice, it's thinking about how we reflect on our own culture. Again, what are our own defining experiences or traditions in our culture that have influenced who we are or how we make certain decisions or how we communicate in the workplace? Learning about other cultures, so creating the space for young people to share some of their family traditions, some of their family norms, some of those, again, defining moments that have helped shape who they are. That creates an opportunity for us to learn from one another. A great manager or a great mentor recognizes that they are both a teacher and a student. That every single one of us, it doesn't matter how experienced you are, if you're the CEO of the company or the youth intern walking in the door on your first day, we all have something to teach one another, and we all have something to learn from one another. And so being mindful of that as we approach our relationships, it enables us to understand each other better. It enables us to go below the surface. So instead of just seeing each other, we really start to know each other and really start to understand one another more. Also, we experience different cultures. So we open the door for us to explore new areas together, challenge our assumptions, and really push ourselves to think about what others who have had different paths, have gone down different paths, what they may be thinking or what has influenced their particular points of view. It's also important from a cultural competence standpoint for us to focus on understanding other people versus fixing them. So again, as managers and mentors, we may be engaging in an open conversation about a particular issue that we're working through as a team, right? And instead of just trying to tell the young person what to believe or what to think, it's creating an understanding for what each of you are thinking about in that moment, right? So you're not trying to fix that young person. You're not trying to convince them of your particular point of view, but you're creating a space in which you can learn from each other and understand the context behind some of those beliefs or some of those experiences. And the last is that just be reminded, I love this expression, that each of us is really the expert of our own experience. No one can fully understand 100% of all that we have been through. And so, again, as young people are coming into the workplace and we're building these youth-adult partnerships, these relationships between managers and mentors and young people, just being mindful that we all have a richness of stories behind us. The more we can create a space where those stories start to surface and we start to build an understanding for one another, the more accelerated we can work through the tactics. The relationships really help to drive the programming, the performance of the projects at hand. Abby, anything you want to add around cultural competence?
Yeah, something that I would just add is that mentor and we've worked with the Mass Mentoring Partnership in the past to provide kind of cultural competency training for our managers in the past to kind of think about implicit biases, how that may affect your perceptions and your interactions with people, and to be more aware of our own stereotypes and cultural competency. And that training has been really helpful to kind of get our managers in the right mindset, knowing that some of these hires are a little bit different population than people that we hire through, say, our campus recruiting program. So I'd encourage folks to leverage trainings like that are available to you. And there's a number of resources out there that I would encourage you to look into for your managers, because it is helpful to set set the groundwork for success.
Thanks, Abby. So in the spirit of we're going to stick on the path of career mentoring. The next point is really around leveraging strengths and challenging growth. I hit on this a little bit earlier, but the importance of really, when we're thinking about the projects or the assignments that we're giving to young people in the workplace, it's being mindful that we're really working to play to their strengths so that they can bring those skills to life in the workplace and further develop those strengths. But we also are mindful of the challenges, so the opportunities for them to get stretch assignments, to identify skills that they want to improve upon and how we can continue to expand those. So if a youth intern has not had much public speaking experience before, how do we work into their experience with us the opportunity to present at staff meetings or team meetings more regularly? Just a brief update around some of the work that they're doing or about their overall internship experience. Again, it gives them the experience of public speaking. It also gives you as a manager the opportunity to reflect with them about each of those experiences and see over time how they have progressed and how they've built a stronger sense of confidence around it. The second point, I just want you to sort of play out this scenario, if you will, right? So each of you on this call are basically driving into a parking lot at a grocery store, and you see a perfect spot that you really want, and you go to drive into it, and all of a sudden somebody cuts you off and weaves right in front of you and pulls into the spot, right? So just think for a moment about what you would do in that particular moment, right? So think about what you would say inside or outside of your head, what actions you would do, how you would feel in that moment, right? So we've got that locked in. Now, fast forward about 30 seconds, that individual jumps out of his car, he runs over to your window and he says, "I'm so sorry, my wife just went into labor in the grocery store and I'm coming to pick her up so we can get her to the hospital." And so all of a sudden, just imagine now what's going through your head and how are you feeling in that moment. The point of that little analogy is that the second bullet is so critical for us in thinking about how we're effective career mentors, and that is we avoid making assumptions as managers and mentors, and we stay grounded in the facts. We stay grounded in understanding the context of where people are coming from. So we don't jump to conclusions. So if we went back to this idea of, all of us are facing different barriers. So maybe, for example, a barrier is one of your youth interns needs to get his or her little brother or little siblings off to summer camp before they grab the bus to come into work, right? But there's only one bus that comes on a certain interval in their particular neighborhood. And so maybe they arrive late a few times over the course of a week, and you jump to the conclusion or jump to the assumption that they're irresponsible, that they don't care much about the summer internship experience, that they're disengaged, until you get grounded in the facts, which is you ask them about it in a transparent and open communication environment. You ask them, hey, I've noticed, again, notice, name, and nurture. I've noticed a couple times that you've been late this week. I just wanted to check in with you and see what's up. And it gives them an opportunity to open up and explain the situation. You now have the understanding, and so you can work with them around a solution that makes sense, that it works for both you and for them. But the importance here, and we've included a link, it's a great little video about what's called the ladder of inference, how we stay low on the ladder on focusing in on the facts, as opposed to going up the ladder and making assumptions which influence our actions. And the more we do those assumptions and actions, we call it the reflexive loop. We just loop back around, and that influences the way we consistently interact with each other then. So we stop understanding each other, and we just live by assumptions, which doesn't set anybody up for success. The last point I would just highlight here is the fourth bullet, which is mentors can really push young people to expand their range of possible solutions. So anytime that you have a project or a task that you're working on with young people, it's really important to ask the question, what else, right? This, again, is going to encourage their critical thinking, creative problem solving. It's going to help them to develop those soft skills that so many employers are looking for in young people. It's not just the hard technical skills, but it's the soft skills of being able to problem solve, to be able to think quickly on your feet around additional ideas, to make connections across different areas of the company or the organization. That, again, until you hit the pause button and zoom out, you're not always giving yourself permission or taking the time to do that. And so by asking what else, you expand your own possible solutions for a project, and you really challenge a young person to give it their all to show up in the best light possible. The next point around career mentoring is just around giving and getting feedback. Again, the first point I highlighted a few times, and I can't emphasize it enough, which is just making sure that feedback from a manager to a youth intern is given in a timely, specific, and action-oriented way. Super, super important that that's done that way, and that feedback shouldn't wait for certain intervals, but it should happen in the moment. So being able to leave a meeting or end a phone call and take 5 minutes to quickly debrief and talk about that experience and identify what the clear next steps are going to be, again, sets everybody up for success, and it creates an environment in which we're all continuing to learn. It gives you the opportunity as well to create a channel where they're giving you feedback as a manager and giving them the permission, or encouraging them rather, to say, you know, hey, when you manage me this way, or when you approach a situation in this particular, with this particular set of tactics, it helps me understand what it is you're looking for, or it helps me understand how this fits in with the bigger picture. Getting that feedback has now reinforced the fact that you're probably going to provide instructions in a similar way moving forward. So again, the open two-way sense of both giving and getting feedback in a timely, specific, and action-oriented manner, again, is helpful. And the last thing is just in terms of modeling openness. So making sure that youth interns, in not only in your relationship with them, but in how you interact with other people on the team, they see you with an openness to feedback from others, and how you take that feedback, process it, and apply it appropriately is really important for them to see you as a role model. We wanted to be able to provide you, as we wind down here, a career mentoring checklist. This is essentially just, if you think about your time with a youth intern over the course of the summer, for example, are there particular things that you can help them work through on their career path or their career journey? And so everything from helping them to explore different career interests, to maybe helping to set up a job shadowing or an informational interview with another aspect of your organization, or with, maybe if you're a smaller organization, another community partner, gives the young person an opportunity, again, to look at things from different points of view and get exposure to more opportunities. Our role as great managers and great mentors is to try to unlock as many opportunities and really expand the social networks of youth interns as much as possible. So regardless of the size of our team or our organization, we can always connect young people to our partners, to other people in our own personal or professional networks, which again help them to understand the different career journeys that others have followed. Doing simple things like reviewing their resume and helping them to think through how they would take the experience in the youth internship and put that onto their resume. So thinking about the successes that they're highlighting in a quantifiable way, thinking about how they talk about the work that they were able to achieve in the internship experience. Also practicing mock interviews and presentations, again, helping them to expand their network, build their skills. Abby mentioned earlier coaching on dressing for success. So don't make assumptions that young people are going to know what the proper attire is for, say, a networking event, or if you're doing an off-site meeting. They might not always know that. So just going through that level of detail with them is really, really helpful, in addition to helping them review their social media profiles, auditing those profiles to make sure that everything is appropriate, and giving them tips on how they can come across more professional in their own personal brand, are all super helpful tips and tactics that you can use as a manager with the youth intern in the workplace. And then last but not least is the final point around closing out the experience, and that's to celebrate, reflect, and connect. Those being three sort of pivotal actions. So celebrating is really taking the time to reflect over what they've accomplished, and you can do that by facilitating a final presentation about their experience, about maybe a special project that they took on. It's an opportunity for you to give them public recognition and really celebrate their contributions to the team, highlight and re-emphasize what their strengths were and how you've seen them grow. Again, noticing, naming, and nurturing their continued growth and development is really key here. Taking time to reflect, not only on what has been learned, but how are they going to apply what has been learned to their next stage, right? And sharing as a manager or as a mentor what you've learned as well from your opportunity to work with them. Again, going back to this mindset that we all have something to teach and all have something to learn. And then last is just expanding possibilities. So setting them up for opportunities for continued networking, continued informational interviews, job shadowing or additional internship or job opportunities. It's being mindful that at the end of a summer work experience, it doesn't have to end. As a great manager or a mentor, you can really help them connect to their next opportunity, which again just furthers their ability to be successful down the road. So I am going to pause. I know we've got some questions coming in, and we are almost out of time as well. So again, I just want to be mindful and just share that if we do have questions that we didn't get to in the course of our conversation today, we will be sure to reflect on these questions and try to get some responses out to folks. So Kristen from the Mentor team has let me know that she has saved the questions, so we will put together a quick FAQ and get that out to all the registered participants. So thank you, Kristen, for that. And then just in closing, I just wanted to highlight, we've given you a lot of content here. And again, we'll make sure that the recording and the slides are available to you. There's also some great additional resources that are available from Mentor, the National Mentoring Partnership. We have an online philanthropic community of practice for anyone representing corporations, foundations, or donors supporting youth mentoring. It's a great place where people can post questions to the field. It's where they can access the latest research or resources to help support corporate-based mentoring programs or community-based mentoring programs. We also offer the Mentoring Connector, which is a national database of mentoring opportunities across the country. You can search by zip code and a wide variety of
Hi, everyone. Unfortunately, it seems that we have lost Dan. So all of our resources are located here on this slide, and this webinar will be sent out tomorrow with a link for the archived recording on our website. Thank you so much for participating, and we look forward to having our next webinar on June 28th. So stay tuned. Thanks.